Welcome to Educational Podcasting Today, the show that not only celebrates educational podcasters, but helps you learn how to create one yourself. Hello, my name is Jeff Bradbury. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have an interest in podcasting or have a podcast of your own. I decided to create this show to share the great educational podcasts and educational podcasters and share my thoughts and tips and tricks in creating both audio and video media. There's, of course, several ways that you can reach out and be a part of this new show. My website, teachercast.net, has several great resources in print, audio, and video format designed to help you create great podcasts. Recently, I opened up a new domain at www.educationalpodcasting.tips, where I will be sharing my favorite podcasting tips and tricks. Make sure you check out all the great resources on teachercast.net today. If you're a podcaster, I would love to hear from you. Perhaps you have a show that you are looking to create and need help, or perhaps you have an established show and wish to discuss some of your favorite podcasting tips. Please contact the show at feedback@teachercast.net or leave us a voicemail at teachercast.net/voicemail. I'd love to feature your podcast here. In today's show, we're going to talk about 5 reasons to start a podcast of your own. I can remember 4 years ago, I was driving from Philadelphia to New York listening to some of the random podcasts on iTunes, and during one of the episodes, a host had mentioned a contest he was running. The prize was a $50 iTunes card. Even though the show was a few weeks old, I reached out to the host and asked if I can correctly answer the question, and luckily, I was first in line, and I won that gift card. This chance meeting turned into a very good friendship, and soon he asked me to co-host a podcast with him. After a few months, I began asking several questions to him about podcasting, and we talked about equipment, apps, recording, and so much more. It was around that time I decided to create the TeacherCast podcast and begin a podcast career of my own. Everyone has their goals when they create their podcasts. For some, it's to help provide great content to the world. For others, it's a way to build a brand for themselves in business. Let's take a look at some of the key reasons why you would want to start a podcast of your own. Number 1 is to share your passions. Podcasting is one of the ultimate creation tools. There are so many things that go into creating a successful podcast. The act and art of sitting down in front of a microphone is only a fraction of what really goes into creating a podcast. In addition to learning about recording your podcast, you need to be a web designer, graphic creator, administrative assistant, booker, and most importantly, a great listener. If you're not podcasting about what you're passionate about, your audience will absolutely see right through you. Think about your favorite TV show or radio program. We are drawn to being entertained by passionate people doing things that they are passionate about. Use your show to speak from the heart and about what you love to do and are good at. Number 2, to build your brand. Brand building is something that is lacking in many teachers. The ability to create a personal and professional image about yourself or your business is the single best skill you can have. Before TeacherCast, there was no TeacherCast. I had to create it, tweak it, and build it from scratch. By creating the TeacherCast podcast, the value of the brand has been lifted by the ability to provide searchable content of a wide variety of topics, all under one domain. Maybe your brand is your name. Perhaps your brand is your classroom. Whatever your platform is, create a taproot, dig it deep, and soon you're going to notice your foundation is strong enough to not only create, but support all of your hopes and dreams for your podcast. Number 3, podcasting can absolutely be done for free. I added this both in jest and in seriousness. Can podcasting be free? Well, maybe. It is true that you can open up your computer, talk through a built-in microphone and camera. It's also true that there are great services such as WordPress.com that will allow you to create free websites and embed music that you've saved onto your Google Drive. Unfortunately, free doesn't always mean superior. Truth be told, podcasting can be free, but to improve your podcast will only take a few $100 maybe, but it will be money well spent in the long run. Number 4, a personal connection with the world. I once watched a movie that echoed the motto, "With great power comes great responsibility." The same can be true about podcasts. With great podcasts comes great knowledge. The ability to reach out to those you have strong connections with or who are experts in the field and invite them to share their passions on your show is a very powerful experience. I have had the fortune to meet and work with educators and companies that I would have no possible way of meeting without the TeacherCast podcast. It has allowed me to have a greater personal connection with the educational world that has completely benefited my students in my classroom. By making these connections, I have been able to learn so much more, and it has made me a better educator. What connections do you want to make with your podcast? Finally, number 5, because it's fun. Over the last 4 years, I've recorded more than 500 podcasting episodes. For me, podcasting provides one of the most enjoyable and stress-free moments each week. For an hour during the show, I have the ability to forget about the world and enjoy having a conversation with somebody about a topic we are both passionate about. I have been having so much fun with it that sometimes I find myself recording between 10 and 15 shows each week. There's, of course, other reasons to start your own podcast. These are only a handful of the reasons why I've enjoyed podcasting for almost half a decade. I encourage you to make time and visit teachercast.net for more information about this and other great podcasts, and reach out to me on Twitter @TeacherCast. Finally, if you've enjoyed this show, please visit my iTunes page at teachercast.net/iTunes and leave a review and a nice show rating. It is simply the best way of supporting this podcast, and it'll help us grow our audience. Please join me at educationalpodcasting.tips and educationalpodcasting.today to learn how you can set up and start your own podcast using WordPress. I hope to feature your show on a future episode. Take care of yourselves. Thank you for supporting TeacherCast, and continue sharing your passions with your students.
National Podcast Day is September 30th. But what is National Podcast Day? It's pretty simple, and you can help spread the word. National Podcast Day is dedicated to promoting podcasting worldwide through public engagement. You may be asking, what can I do to get involved with National Podcast Day? It's easy. Head over to nationalpodcastday.com and check the suggestions. But ultimately, these options are endless. Remember, September 30th, nationalpodcastday.com, and let's start the conversation.